Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of How Beginner Friendly Is, where I try out a brand new killer for the very first time, starting all the way from scratch. How challenging are they to master as a new player? How do they play when you don't have access to all the perks and add-ons? And most importantly, how fun are they to play? That's what we will try to find out in this series. But before we get into today's episode, let's go over the premises of this series one more time. Number 1. For the first 3 perk slots unlocked, I'm only going to use the killer's original perks. Number 2. For the last perk slot unlocked, I will only use perks that are universal to every killer. That means perks I have previously unlocked from, let's say, the shrine, is not usable in this context. Number 3. I'm starting at basically 0 blood points to get the most authentic experience. That means for the first match I will be starting with only 1 perk and absolutely no add-ons at all. Number 4. I will play a total of 10 matches with every killer. How many levels I gain on the way and the perks and add-ons that I get is out of my control, and if you would do the same as me, your experience would differ from mine. And number 5. I will not read up on any killer beforehand. I'm going in blind as best as I can. So today will be a somewhat different episode because I will do a 2-parter, and it was not something I had planned beforehand. So in this episode we are doing 2 killers and I will play 5 matches with each of them, 10 matches total. Why I'm doing it this way? Well, you will find out soon enough. So let's first take a look at the Cannibal, aka Leatherface, aka Bubba. This killer is considered easy to play, so that should be a good sign compared to the Doctor and Oni, who is considered hard to play. Now, what is the first thing you think about when you hear Bubba? No. Absolutely not. No. Yeah, pretty much. So, why are players notorious when it comes to face camping with Bubba? Let's see if we can find out. His first perk is called Knockout. Survivors put in the dying state does not reveal their aura to the other survivors if they are outside a certain distance, so it kind of acts like a blindness status effect then, I guess. The survivors also crawl slower for a certain period after being downed. His second perk is called Barbecue and Chili, and what this does is it reveals the auras of survivors who is at a certain distance when you hook a survivor. I've heard this is a very popular perk to use, and it seems pretty good actually. His last perk is Franklin's Demise. What this does is quite simple. You hit a survivor with your basic attack and they drop their item. I can see this perk to be a lot of fun as a killer and very frustrating as a survivor. Now let's look at his power. His power is called Bubba's Chainsaw. When you activate this, Bubba will do a chain sweep that can hit multiple survivors. Any survivor who gets hit by this is instantly put down in the dying state. You start a match with 3 charges and you can spend charges to prolong the chain sweep. The charges also will passively charge up when you are not using the chainsaw. If you do hit something other than living flesh, you will go into a tantrum, flailing your chainsaw around and you are not able to move for the duration. In other words, you do not want to run into anything else than survivors while chain sweeping. Well, that's basically it for his power. But before we get into the first match, let's suit up. Now that's better. And into the first match we go. The first match ended up in Midwich. I tried his power and well, I didn't get it. When I'm being chased by a Bubba as a survivor, I feel like he's chain sweeping for an eternity, but when I do it, it lasts like 2 seconds. There must be something I'm doing wrong. And I'll admit this was really frustrating. I thought that I was hitting things and that was the reason I stopped, but I would find out later that I was just doing it wrong. But all in all, I got a few tantrums, I got a few hits in, but in the end everyone survived. An okay first match. I didn't get enough blood points to unlock another perk slot, but I did get a few new add-ons. And I have to say, these add-ons are actually easy to understand because they are numbers that you can relate to, so that was really nice. With so many questions about this killer, let's just head into the next game. And this time we are in Badham. Still, I couldn't figure out why the chain sweep was so short or why I couldn't make it last for more than 2 seconds. It was so frustrating. The only thing I realized this game was that even when you are in a tantrum, you can still kill the survivors. So that was pretty nice. But during this game, I was starting to realize something. I wasn't having any fun. I didn't find this killer to be engaging or interesting in any way or form. He is just so one-dimensional and boring to play. At least for me, there was no satisfaction when I hit the survivors with my chain sweep. The game ended with a 4K, but I didn't really feel like I had to play well to get the 4K. I just had to press the power button and run into survivors. At least I could unlock my second perk after this game, and for this one I chose Knockout. I find all of Bubba's 3 starter perks to be really interesting, but I chose this one for now. And into the next game we go. So this time we are at the Macmillan estate. Still, I couldn't figure out why my chain sweep was so short, so it ended up being another frustrating match. This could be ended up being another 4K match, but the last survivor ended up being really lucky and I let her go. But this is where I start to realize, even when I'm having a really good match, ending up with a 4K and all, there isn't really much to talk about. So doing 10 matches with this killer would be pointless in my mind, because what you do in the first 3 matches is basically it. And I was still not having any fun at all. So let's just save us some time and go straight into the next match. And this time we are at Ormond. I tried to figure out how to prolong the chain sweep, and yes, the answer was right in front of my face the whole time. I just didn't understand it. In my head, it just didn't make sense that you would hold the power button to charge the sweep, but once the sweep is activated, you need to release the button, then press it again before the sweep is over to prolong it. I don't think my brain was working right this evening, so to me this was just weird. Well, I kind of gave up halfway into the match, and in the end all the survivors escaped. 1 match left, and we are back at the Macmillan estate. Once again, I was so bored I gave up in the end, and I realized I just had to stop it right here. I just couldn't do it anymore. I've seen what Bubba can do, and I've seen his perks. I'd seen enough at this point, so let's just wrap up this half of the episode with the verdict on Bubba. So, after playing 5 matches with Bubba, how do I now feel? Well, it was a bit unfair against Bubba because I went into this thinking I wouldn't like him. I should have gone into this with a neutral point of view, but I felt that was hard with this one. I was quite excited about his perks though, because I've heard so much about them, and his perks are really interesting and really fun, I'll give him that. And yes, he is really easy to play and doesn't really require much brain capacity to play well. But in the end, the question is, how beginner friendly is Bubba? And the answer to that question, I have to give Bubba a 9 out of 10. He is very easy to play, his power is easy to use when you first get it, and his perks are really good. It takes a bit of practice with the sweeping and not to hit things, but once you get the hang of that, well, that's everything you need to know. A Little disclaimer though, I did play a few rounds with Bubba later in the evening and finally realized how I could prolong the chain sweep. That made it much easier to play, but did it change anything? Nope, it didn't. So, for the second part of this episode, we are looking at the Trickster. This is also a killer who I've met quite a few times and haven't really found any way to counter. Though, as for me trying this killer out, I was a bit worried about the aiming of the blades since I do play on a controller. But let's first check out his perks. So, his first perk is called Starstruck. Any survivor within your terror radius will get exposed when you pick up a downed survivor. This lasts for a fairly short or medium duration. I could absolutely see many cool combinations with this perk and I would consider this a really good perk. The next is called Hex Crowd Control. So it's a Hex perk which spawns a Hex totem on the map, and this perk is active as long as that totem is still on the map. This blocks every window a survivor fastballs through for a short duration. This could be really good in shortening the chases, especially loops like for example the Killer Shack. I like this one as well. His last perk is called No Way Out. Every time you hook a survivor for the first time, you add 12 seconds to opening the exit gates. So if you hook every survivor at least once, it will take a long time opening the exit gates. So I could see this to be quite useful as well. All in all, his perks are really good. And now for his power. His power is called Showstopper, and wow, this was a lot of text for something that is really simple. You have 44 knives. You throw the knives. You refill the knives at a locker. Hitting survivors with a certain number of knives take them into the injured state. Do it again and they are put into the dying state. That basically sums it all up. His special ability is called Main Event. For a duration, the Trickster has unlimited blades and can also throw faster and move a bit faster while throwing. So I guess it's like if the Trickster snorted some cocaine and had a sugar rush. A little disclaimer though, my aim was so bad I never had the chance to activate his power. And yeah, you heard that right. So let's just change his outfit a bit and get into the first match. So we are at the grave. In this match I just wanted to try out my aim to see how it feels throwing the knives, and well, I could already tell this would be really hard for someone who is born with 2 left feet for arms. I couldn't even hit the water if I threw the knives from a boat. Yikes. Well, it went as expected. Everyone escaped, which is fine with me, and since we couldn't unlock any perk slots, let's just go straight into the next game. And now we are at Midwich, and once again I realized that it's not that much to talk about, and much of the reason is because my aiming is so bad I can't really play the Trickster. I don't want to talk negatively about this killer because I can absolutely see he could be somewhat fun to play, but as I couldn't get the aiming to work, it kind of ruined it for me. I got 1 kill on this map and the rest escaped. There wasn't really much else to talk about. Well, still no new perk slot, so next match. And it's Orman again. And well, my aiming, I'm probably a much bigger threat to the local wildlife than I am to survivors. Every player I met this evening must have thought I was playing the game blindfolded while handstanding or something, and that's fine with me. Just take a look at this, and yes, I suck. 2 kills, 2 escaped. Next match. This time it's Bedlam again, and there isn't really anything to talk about, so, well, let's just skip this one. We finally unlocked our second perk slot and I went with Starstruck. And into the final match we go. And it's Orman. Again. There is not much to say about this one either. My aiming got a bit better, but still not nearly good enough. Though it ended up being a 4K, so I guess I should be satisfied. But as with Bubba, it didn't really give me any satisfaction. I also found this killer to be quite boring to play, though not as much as Bubba. So let's wrap this up and come up with a verdict. So, after playing 5 matches with the Trickster, what is my opinion? Well, first of all, I must say that all 3 of his perks are absolutely great in their own way. I could totally see the use of all of them in different builds, so they are really good starter perks for this killer. His ability is also super easy to use if you have the aim for it. You have quite a lot of blades in your disposal, and restocking is very fast. So I do see why quite a lot of people play him. As for engaging and interesting, I didn't really see that. I didn't find this killer to be fun to play at all, but then again that is also because of my aiming. But all in all, the big question is, how beginner friendly is the Trickster? And I have to give him a 9 out of 10 as well. His perks are really good, his power is really easy to use, and for many players it's quite hard to counter him. As with Bubba, he is quite one-dimensional and could maybe be a bit tedious to play in the long run, but as for the first killer to play, you could absolutely have a good time with this one. I never got to try out his main event, so I missed out on that one, but I think that would be a really cool thing to try out as well. So, all in all, and this applies to both killers, super easy to use, really good killers to start out with, but in my personal opinion, extremely boring to play. And it's important to point out that this is just my opinion based on this evening, and are affected by my own skills as a player. I don't mean to offend anyone who plays a lot of Bubba or Trickster, it just wasn't my cup of tea. So I do apologize for that. Well, that's it for this time. I'll see you again next week for another episode. Thank you so much for watching. Whoop whoop!